My name is Mae Robinson, and I am a 42-year-old high school teacher from Minneapolis. What I'm about to share with you is my near-death experience's testimony of what happened when Jesus showed me the shocking truth about the true and the real power of fasting. I literally saw what actually happens in the spirit world when you fast, and that experience completely transformed my understanding of faith, fasting, and prayer. But before we start, please let me know where you're listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other on this channel. Enjoy listening. This began on September 12, 2023. It was a crisp autumn morning when I left for work. The roads were slightly icy from an early frost, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I remember thinking about the upcoming parent-teacher conferences while waiting at a red light on Marshall Avenue. That's when it happened. A truck lost control on the ice, slid through the intersection, and struck my car on the driver's side. The impact was devastating. The paramedics later told me that my heart had stopped for 4 minutes and 23 seconds. But for me, those brief minutes felt like an eternity, and what I experienced during that time would forever change my life and my relationship with God. When the physical world faded away, I found myself in what I can only describe as a realm of pure light. The pain was gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace. But this wasn't just any kind of peace. It was a profound, all-encompassing serenity that words can't fully capture. As I tried to make sense of my surroundings, I became aware of a presence. That's when I saw him, Jesus Christ himself, standing before me in a glory that made the brightest sunlight seem dim in comparison. His appearance wasn't exactly what you see in traditional paintings or church windows. The light emanating from him was almost impossible to look at directly, yet his presence was so comforting that I couldn't look away. His eyes held such depth of love and understanding that I felt completely known and accepted, despite all my flaws and failures. "Erica," he said, "there is much you need to learn about drawing closer to me." What followed was a conversation that would revolutionize my understanding of spiritual disciplines, particularly fasting. Jesus began by showing me various scenes from my life, moments when I had struggled with my faith, times when I felt distant from God, and occasions when I had relied solely on my own strength rather than his guidance. "My child," he said, "you have sought me in prayer, but you have overlooked one of the most powerful tools I have given my children for drawing near to me." That's when he began to reveal the true power and purpose of fasting. What I learned went far beyond my previous understanding of simply abstaining from food. Jesus showed me scenes from biblical history, Moses on Mount Sinai, Elijah in the wilderness, and even his own 40-day fast. But these weren't just historical events. I was able to witness them as if I were there, feeling the spiritual transformation these individuals underwent during their fasts. Fasting, Jesus explained, is not about depriving yourself of food. It's about humbling yourself before me and creating space in your life for my presence to fill. He then showed me something that deeply moved me, a vision of my own spirit during times when I had casually dismissed the idea of fasting. I could see how my soul had become cluttered with worldly concerns, leaving little room for deep spiritual connection. Then he showed me what could have been, how those same situations could have been transformed through the practice of spiritual fasting. Many of my children, Jesus continued, approach fasting with reluctance or fear. They see it as a burden rather than a gift. But I want to show you the truth about this powerful spiritual tool. He then revealed to me how fasting works in the spiritual realm. I saw it as a golden thread connecting earth to heaven, a direct line of communication that becomes strengthened when we temporarily set aside our physical needs to focus on spiritual nourishment. I witnessed how fasting, when combined with prayer, created what looked like a brilliant light that cut through spiritual darkness. Jesus then showed me various types of fasts and their purposes. I saw people engaging in different forms of fasting, some for a meal, others for a day, and some for longer periods. Each type of fast served a specific purpose in their spiritual journey. What amazed me was seeing how each fast, when done with the right heart, created a unique spiritual frequency that resonated in the heavenly realm. "Remember," Jesus said, "the length of the fast is not what matters most. It's the heart condition and the spiritual purpose behind it." He then showed me something that particularly struck me, how fasting affects our spiritual sensitivity. I saw it like a spiritual antenna being raised higher and higher, allowing for clearer reception of God's voice and guidance. I witnessed how people who incorporated regular fasting into their lives developed a heightened spiritual awareness that stayed with them even when they weren't fasting. Jesus also revealed the common mistakes people make while fasting. I saw individuals fasting for the wrong reasons, to appear spiritual to others, to try to manipulate God into giving them what they wanted, or fasting without any spiritual focus at all. These fasts appeared dim and ineffective in the spiritual realm, while fasts done with genuine humility and seeking God shone brightly. He then showed me the proper way to prepare for and break a fast. I saw how physical preparation was important, but spiritual preparation was crucial. I witnessed people preparing their hearts through prayer and Bible study before beginning their fasts, and how this preparation maximized the spiritual benefits of their fasting experience. "My daughter," Jesus said, "I want you to share what you've learned. Many of my children are struggling to connect with me, not realizing that this powerful key is available to them." He then showed me specific guidelines for fasting. I saw how beginning with shorter fasts and gradually building up was like spiritual training. Just as you wouldn't run a marathon without training, Jesus showed me how spiritual muscles need to be developed gradually through fasting. I witnessed the importance of staying hydrated and taking care of your body during a fast. Your body is a temple, Jesus reminded me, and fasting should never be about harming it. I saw the significance of breaking a fast properly, starting with light foods and gradually returning to normal eating. This wasn't just about physical health, it represented the careful stewardship of the spiritual insights gained during the fast. But perhaps the most profound revelation came when Jesus showed me the incredible spiritual power of fasting and how it directly impacts spiritual warfare. I found myself in what appeared to be a vast, multi-dimensional realm. It was as though I were watching the struggles of humanity unfold in a way I had never imagined. People were facing intense trials, temptations that seemed almost unbearable, battles against addiction, fear, doubt, and despair. As I observed, I noticed something striking. Certain individuals appeared to be surrounded by a shimmering, translucent shield. It glowed faintly, pulsating with a quiet strength, and seemed to deflect the arrows of darkness that were hurled at them, arrows that represented spiritual attacks, doubts, and discouragement. These people were not free from struggles, but their resilience was remarkable. They didn't falter under pressure the way others did. Jesus turned to me and said, "Do you see those shields? They are the result of fasting. When my people fast, they're not just denying themselves physical nourishment, they are stepping into deeper reliance on me. Through fasting, their spiritual armor is fortified." He paused for a moment, letting the significance of his words settle into my heart. Then he continued, "Fasting is not just a discipline for self-control, it is an act of war against the forces of darkness. It strengthens your spirit, weakens the grip of sin, and aligns you with my will. Prayer alone is powerful, but fasting amplifies it, breaking spiritual strongholds that would otherwise remain untouched." As he spoke, the scenes around me shifted. I saw chains that symbolized addictions, destructive habits, and deep-seated fears, wrapped tightly around people. For some, these chains seemed unbreakable, no matter how fervently they prayed. But then I saw individuals fasting. Their fasting appeared as waves of radiant energy emanating from their spirits, targeting the chains and causing them to disintegrate, one link at a time. I realized that fasting was the key to breakthroughs that prayer alone could not achieve. But what came next really saddened my heart. Jesus showed me the power of fasting in intercession, not just for oneself but for others. I saw a mother fasting and praying for her son, who was battling addiction. As she fasted, her prayers transformed into brilliant fiery arrows of light, piercing through the thick darkness surrounding him. Her fasting created a protective barrier around her son, shielding him from spiritual attacks and giving him a chance to find clarity and strength to resist temptation. I saw a husband fasting for his wife, who had drifted away from God. His fasting was like a beacon of light, illuminating the path back to faith for her. In another scene, a small group of people fasted together for their community, and the darkness that had loomed over their town began to lift. The combined power of their fasting and prayer spread like ripples, touching lives they had never even met. "This is why I told my disciples that some breakthroughs only come through prayer and fasting," Jesus said, referring to Mark 9 verse 29. This, Jesus said, is why I told my disciples that some breakthroughs only come through prayer and fasting. Jesus said, referring to Mark 9 verse 29, "Fasting intensifies your prayers. It humbles you before me, and in that humility, my power is released in ways you cannot comprehend." He turned his gaze to me, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. "Leslie," he said softly, "fasting is not just for you. It is a gift for others, a way to stand in the gap for those who are weak, lost, or struggling. When you fast for someone, you are partnering with me in their redemption." As my time in his presence drew to a close, Jesus gave me specific instructions about sharing this message. He showed me how many Christians today have either forgotten or never learned the true power of fasting. He revealed how the modern church has often neglected this vital spiritual discipline, leading to a weakening of spiritual power and discernment. "Tell them," he said, "that fasting is not an option for those who want to walk in my fullness. It's a necessary tool for spiritual growth and victory." Before sending me back, Jesus showed me one final vision, a glimpse of how the church could be transformed if believers restored the practice of regular fasting. I saw churches filled with spiritual power, believers walking in greater authority, and a revival spreading across nations. The next thing I knew, I was back in my body, surrounded by medical personnel in the emergency room. The doctors were amazed at my recovery, especially given the severity of my injuries. But I knew that my physical healing was secondary to the spiritual truths I had been entrusted to share. Since that day, I've implemented everything Jesus taught me about fasting. I started small, as he instructed, beginning with one-meal fasts and gradually building up to longer periods. The results have been remarkable. My prayer life has deepened, my spiritual discernment has sharpened, and I've witnessed breakthrough after breakthrough in areas where I had previously seen no movement. Then 6 months after my first near-death experience, I found myself back in that realm of pure light. This time, it wasn't due to a car accident. I had developed a severe allergic reaction to a new medication, and my heart had stopped for nearly 3 minutes in the emergency room. But the moment I left my body, I knew exactly where I was going. The familiar warmth of his presence enveloped me before I even saw him. When Jesus appeared, his smile was radiant with approval. "My daughter," he said, "you have been faithful with what I showed you." With a gentle wave of his hand, Jesus began showing me scenes from the past 6 months of my life, but from heaven's perspective. I saw myself during my first one-meal fast after returning from my previous experience. What appeared to be just a simple skipped lunch on earth was actually creating ripples in the spiritual realm. Each time I chose prayer over food, it was like watching a golden thread being woven into a magnificent tapestry. "Watch carefully," Jesus said, as he showed me my progression from those initial small fasts to longer periods. I saw my spiritual sensitivity growing like a delicate plant being carefully tended. Each fast was like water and sunlight to this growing awareness. Then he showed me something that took my breath away, the actual moment when my spiritual hearing became clearer. It looked like layers of static and interference being peeled away from my spirit, leaving a clear channel of communication with heaven. "This," Jesus explained, "is what happens when my children create space for me through fasting." The scenes shifted to the spiritual battles I'd faced. I saw how my fasting had actually created what looked like a protective shield around me. "Remember the armor of God I spoke of through Paul?" Jesus asked. "Fasting helps my children wear it properly." He then showed me the ripple effects of sharing these truths with others. I saw Sarah, the young mother from our church, during her battles with anxiety and depression. What I hadn't been able to see on earth was the army of angels that had been dispatched to assist her during her fasting periods. Her transformation wasn't just emotional. I could now see how her spirit had been gradually strengthened and fortified. "Your obedience has created pathways for others," Jesus said, showing me how my testimony had inspired others to begin their own fasting journeys. Each person who started fasting was like a new light being lit in a dark room, and these lights were beginning to spread. The corporate fasts our church had undertaken were even more remarkable from this heavenly perspective. I saw how our unified fasting created what looked like a protective dome over our community, with prayers rising like incense and God's power flowing down like golden rain. "But my daughter," Jesus said, "there is still so much more." He then showed me glimpses of the future, possibilities that could unfold if God's people truly embraced the power of fasting. I saw revival breaking out, healings becoming commonplace, and a spiritual awakening that took my breath away. "This is why I brought you back," he explained. "To show you that what I revealed before was just the beginning. Fasting is not just a spiritual discipline, it's a key that unlocks the storehouse of heaven's power for my children." He then showed me how the physical hunger we feel during fasting is actually a divine gift, a tangible reminder of our deeper hunger for God. In the spiritual realm, this hunger acts like a magnet, drawing down God's presence and power. "Tell them," Jesus said, "that I long to move powerfully among my people. Tell them that fasting is not about earning my love, they already have that. It's about positioning themselves to carry my glory in greater measure." Before sending me back, Jesus gave me one final vision. I saw how each fast, no matter how small, was recorded in heaven's books. "Every act of devotion through fasting is precious to me," he said. "Even when my children don't see instant results, heaven is taking notice." As I felt myself being drawn back to my body, Jesus' final words echoed in my spirit. "Remember, Erica, fasting is not just about abstaining from food, it's about making room for more of me. Tell my children that I am waiting to fill every space they create through fasting with my presence and power." When I opened my eyes in the hospital room, the doctors were amazed at my rapid recovery. But I knew that this second experience wasn't just about me surviving another brush with death, it was about Jesus confirming and expanding on the truths he had shown me before. This second encounter has only deepened my conviction about the power and importance of fasting in our spiritual lives. It's not optional, it's essential. And the rewards are far greater than any temporary discomfort we might face. As Jesus showed me, every fast is an investment in our spiritual growth, every hunger pang's an opportunity for greater intimacy with God. So I continue to fast, continue to teach others, and continue to watch in awe as God moves powerfully through this ancient but often neglected spiritual discipline. And I'll never forget Jesus' loving invitation. "The door is open, you need only to enter in."